Good afternoon, students. This is welcome to my ABM224 class, thanks to the coronavirus. So today we're going to cover buying and selling for Chapter 5. So please pay attention and we'll go over this in Zoom later. But if you have any questions, please feel free. This video may be in parts. So we got about an hour and a half of lecture to get through. So take a seat and let's see what we can do. All right, here we go. So I'm going to move you a little closer to the board because I got a little tiny whiteboard, but we'll make this work. So in buying and selling, specifically, we're going to start off with the supply chain. And in the supply chain, they consist of four major areas, right? So the first box that we're going to draw is going to be the supplier. So the supplier usually is the guy who buys the raw ingredients, okay, in order to manufacture anything. From the supplier, then it goes to a manufacturer. And from the manufacturer, then it goes directly to usually a distribution, a DC, which is a distribution center, or wholesaler, in order to sell your products bigger. Then from the wholesaler, it ends up meeting at the retail. So at the retailer is where a lot of our major transactions take place. The retailer is where we can sell our goods directly to our customers. So our customers then will exchange money for products. In this case, I'm just going to draw a TV in exchange for a television, okay? Just as an example. Next, as we look through the supply chain, there's two major interactions that go with each and every single one of these supply chain. You first have a buyer, which I'm going to put in blue. So this color is a buyer. Okay. And then in red, you have a seller. And these two need to have a sales associate, okay? So each one needs to come to agreement in order to process. So a buyer issues a thing called a PO, which is a purchase order, okay? And a salesperson puts together their form to start to kick off to buy an item is called a sales order. So for each one of the supply chains, you have a buyer and a seller. So you'll have a seller sell their raw materials to a manufacturer who talks to a buyer in order for that contract to happen. So that contract happens right at that level. They also continue down the supply chain where a manufacturer will then also have a sales associate or a sales team to sell their manufactured goods to a distribution center where they have a buyer, or they can bypass this entire process and go directly to the retailer, where the retailer has a buying team that looks specifically for each section and category of products or services. The DC warehouse will also then offer another buying and selling opportunity. The retailer, however, has its own sales associates that will then sell directly to the customer, whereas the customer, in this case, would then issue a purchase as their own buyer. So as you can see, these transactions happen every single time. And in accounting, we call these purchase orders. Or if you're a salesperson that's issuing a sales order, it can happen at any time. So in order for product to move through the supply chain, we need one other major component to help us move materials through the supply chain. We need transportation, which is also known as a fancy term is called logistics. Logistics, okay, we specifically look for would be trains, freight, which would be shipping specifically, which would be trucks. So shipping or ships, I'll just go ships, trucks, right? And last one would be airplanes. This is just, these are just ways specifically that we can get our product from one location to another, whether they be domestic or international in the logistics. So the logistics, I'm going to do the logistics in green. The logistics comes in and helps with the transaction between supplier to manufacturer. Logistics also is incorporated between manufacturer and DC warehouse. If the manufacturing or the distribution center or retailer doesn't have their own fleet set of trucks, you'd use a third-party logistics. Specifically, somebody like C.H. Robinson. You guys would use a company called UPS, United States Postal Service, which is USPS, FedEx. Those are ways that you guys get packages delivered. Well, we do it too. We just use a much larger fleet system directly in order to have logistics be part of every transaction as part of a sales order. There's two major kinds of sales or logistics that a buyer or seller will request. Okay, so if you're a buyer, usually we ask for it to be FOB. So a buyer would request FOB. FOB stands for freight on board, okay? And FOB means, if you see that on the purchase order specifically, it means that the buyer pays for freight. Now, a sales associate or a salesperson who would initiate a sales order, they aren't going to request it FOB. They're going to request it from the sales. So if you're a seller, sales request logistical transportation in a form of delivered. Okay, so delivered basically means that the sales will not pay for shipping. That the price of shipping is already included in the purchase order, okay? So this is kind of how we look about the entire supply chain, from every single one of these transactions where a buyer and seller comes together to make an agreement between a supplier, manufacturer to distribution center or wholesaler in this case, or manufacturer directly to retailer. They go through each one of these, and each one of these are different business entities. This is what we call business-to-business sales. If you look in the supply chain between raw supplier, manufacturer, distributor, and retailer, this whole purple area is with what we consider to be business B2B sales. Okay, that's what we mean. The only time we talk about B2C, specifically, if you follow me in orange, is where the retailer or the manufacturer sells directly to the consumer. This is known as B2C sales. Okay? So that is step one. I'm going to take a picture of this so you guys can have it uploaded for your notes, specifically, since it looks a little backwards. And I'm going to pause the video because we're going to move on to cost accounting, so you understand, because there's a brand new income statement moving forward. Stay tuned.